Okay, hello and welcome to our latest webinar, which we'll be looking at how implicit responses and consumer neuroscience can help us to optimise our packaging. It's great to have you with us. So my name is Becky Hutchins. I'm a Senior Research Executive here at Marketing Sciences Unlimited, and I'm joined by Chris Peach, who will be talking to us today. He's a Research Director at Marketing Sciences Unlimited, with over 18 years experience in packaging and research. So he's going to guide us through for about the next 20 minutes. If you have any questions at all, please just type them into the questions panel, which you should be able to see on the webinar setup, and we'll answer those at the end for you. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, traditionally, reactions to new packs have been gauged by asking consumers what they think of the pack. But experience shows that what they say often isn't what they really feel. In this session, we'll hear how we're increasingly using more sophisticated approaches to understand how effective packs are at influencing perceptions of a brand. So, according to statistics quoted on the internet, a larger Tesco store, certainly pre-Dave Lewis, will stock around 40,000 product lines. But the average household will only buy around 300 to 400 different products over the course of a year, and on average will only buy around 40 products per shopping trip. Now, our own research for our shopper team reveals that during a weekly grocery shop, the average shopper spends only around 30 minutes in store deciding what to buy. To be successful, your pack needs to stand out. It needs to communicate your proposition. Now, that's nothing new there then, but do the maths. 30 minutes to narrow down 40,000 product lines to the 40 that we want to buy. It means that shoppers will ignore or reject some 20 products every single second, or over 1,300 products every minute. So question yourself about your pack. How fast does it grab attention and communicate its point of difference? Now think about how we research pack changes. For those of you who have either attended or watched a focus group, a new product or pack is dissected over the course of maybe an hour-and-a-half session. Or if we're validating the performance amongst a larger number of people, the interview might last up to 20 minutes. But can we really expect to get a realistic response when our approach to testing pack changes is really so far removed from reality? Now, perhaps surprisingly, I'm not saying that the answer is that we ditch the focus group or stop asking consumers what they think of a new pack, although I have heard a few people say that over the years. Well, I believe that these numbers highlight just how important it is to have someone experienced with packaging to listen to what consumers say and then read between the lines to identify what they really mean, even though it's not what they might have said. Anyone can ask a consumer what they think of a pack, but not everyone has the experience to understand what they mean. In Marketing Sciences, we've been integrating consumers' explicit or rational responses to packaging, combining it with the power of their implicit reactions, giving our clients a much clearer understanding of the effectiveness of their pack and a clearer direction as to how to optimise it. For many years, we've been accumulating results of every pack test we've undertaken, and this norms database now spans some 46 markets around the world. It tells us how easy, or rather how hard it is, to change consumers' perceptions with a pack change. However, it can also be used to highlight differences between consumers' perceptions and reality. For example, we know that of every new pack we've tested, a little over 1 in 4 packs are felt by consumers to be more distinctive than the existing pack. Now, this is what consumers rationally perceive. However, we also use a more objective measure of shelf impact to truly understand whether a pack is better able to be found on shelf. We show shoppers a series of shelf displays on a computer screen, and each shelf display, the brand or the pack we're testing, is in different positions and with different competitor adjacencies. We want to understand the pure pack impact and not be biased by a savvy shopper who knows where to find their brand. The respondent's task is simple: to find our test brand as quickly as they can and across a series of shelf displays. However, when we compare these find times against existing packs, we see that only 1 in 5 new packs deliver a significantly faster find time. If you'd relied on consumer perceptions, you would have made your decision to launch based on an inaccurate indication of how your pack might perform at the fixture in some 20% of occasions. Now, we all want our brand to stand out from competitors, to pop at the fixture, but how is this typically done? We might show them a shelf display for a finite period of time, for example, and then ask them what brands they can remember seeing. But can we rely on what they tell us? Their responses are likely to include a level of overclaim. I saw a display of soft drinks, so Coca-Cola must have been there. But think how a pack is identified on shelf in the context of our shopper's grocery trip. I'm walking down the aisle, and your pack must catch my eye to slow my autopilot around the store. Okay, so it's caught my eye, but do I realise what I've seen? Have I correctly identified the brand in that split second it caught my eye? A single eye movement takes just 200 milliseconds, the time a product gets to draw a shopper in. For a pack to register in our claimed recall, it has to both stand out from the clutter and be identified for the brand that it is. But if I have a problem and my pack is now less likely to be recalled, exactly what is wrong? Is it recessive on shelf, or are shoppers seeing it but just not identifying it for my brand? Claimed recall on its own isn't telling us the complete story. However, using eye tracking gives us an additional level of understanding. It shows whether a brand really is being seen. If it is, then our problem is around brand linkage and a need perhaps to dial up a key brand identifier on pack that shoppers use to recognise me. If eye tracking reveals my pack isn't being seen, then I need to reflect how I can visually disrupt the fixture and not fade into the background. Now, eye tracking can also help enrich our understanding of how a pack communicates your key proposition. By tracking where the eye looks in the first few seconds of being exposed to a pack, we can understand why a pack fails to deliver a desired message. Looking at the example on the screen, we can see how the shoppers navigate around the pack in the first few moments of consideration, and whether they accept it or reject it. Does the design provide for an efficient route around key elements of the branding and the on-pack claims? Simplicity in design will help. Cluttered packs or ones overloaded with information will make it much harder for consumers to decode and decide whether to buy it. Remember what we said earlier about ignoring or rejecting 20 products every second. Also, focusing on a message that most influences someone to buy your brand helps. But do you know what the main motivation is to buy your product? If consumers aren't taking away that message when they look at your pack, you'll want to address it. But how can you fix it if you don't exactly know what the problem is? Eye tracking will tell your design team whether the pack is channeling the eye to where the claim is located. If it isn't, then your message either needs to move or become more prominent to attract attention and change how the eye navigates around the pack. If it is being seen, then your problem isn't design related. You need to think about what you're saying because the message is lacking credibility. That's one problem, but it's two very different solutions. Now think about ranges. Increasingly, we're seeing brands capitalising on their success by launching additional variants, different flavours, shampoos for different types of hair, cleaners for specific areas around your house. And for many brands, one product is not enough, and so ranges become tiered, the good, better, best strategy that many brands, including private label brands, are increasingly adopting. As a consumer, I might turn to my preferred brand, but can I navigate their range and find the exact product that is right for my needs? As a first step, hopefully I can see a difference between them. Consumers tend to use colour to tell differences apart, or maybe a visual. Experience shows that both tend to be faster for our brains to process than a written variant name. But comprehension can only come about if the chosen colour or visual is intuitive. And here lies another challenge. How do I test the ease with which shoppers can navigate a range so you can justify updating your packaging? Give someone long enough and one would hope that your pack design can communicate the desired benefits, and knowing this is important. But in reality, shoppers don't have time or can't be bothered to spend the time to search your range for the subtle clues. So we use time responses and exercises to test understanding, deliberately putting them under pressure to give a fast response and so better reflecting the reality of their weekly grocery shop. We tell them we're going to show them a range for a particular brand and that they should search it to find a variant which offers a specific benefit. One that best relieves a chesty cough, for example, or a yoghurt with the lowest level of fat, a laundry stain remover that's best on whites. We measure how quickly they identify a suitable product and whether they're correct in their choice. Experience has shown that this timed approach is much better at discriminating between different design routes, identifying the stronger route than traditional routes that rely solely on simple, rational responses. We combine it with eye tracking, and we can see how they go about navigating ranges, where the eye looks within a pack's design for that benefit information. And have you placed your benefit communication for that variant where they expect it, or are you forcing them to spend time hunting down your message? Now, using implicit techniques to measure the ease of finding a brand on shelf or how a range is navigated is only part of the puzzle. What is really going on in our brain when we decide whether to buy a brand? We simply cannot consciously process all the information around us. We're constantly bombarded with information. Remember the 40,000 products in 30 minutes. It's an impossible task. So how does our brain cope? In this business world in which we operate, we're used to nice linear decision trees and like to think that we consumers are rational creatures, bound by economic thinking, making rational choices about the products we buy and the reasons we buy them, weighing up each product, its price, the look, the feel, etc. However, this assumption is wrong. Despite what we might like to think, the conscious mind is simply not running the show. We do not think as much as we think we do. Until recently, all of our thinking models were based around this paradigm. First we think, then we do, and finally we feel. I want to buy a washing powder. I will buy this one. I bought this one because it appears it would do the job well. I know the brand, it's a good price. However, breakthroughs in neuroscience have shown us that this rational model of decision making is not correct. Our brain is constantly processing information long before we're consciously aware of it. But we're not robots, but feeling creatures, driven and bound by our emotions. No matter how rational the choice, there is an emotional component at the heart. First we feel, then we do, and only then do we think about it. But critically, this unconscious emotional dimension operates at a level outside of our awareness, but it has a massive impact upon our conscious decision making. Because of this, we need to employ techniques that may be outside of our existing scope. So going back to our 40,000 packs, how is it possible? Because of the role our unconscious plays in this decision-making process. Okay, but what does this mean for brands and their packaging? What we know is that a rational conscious evaluation is not taking place. When we see a pack, our brain tries to make sense of it. A whole network of associations light up in our brain based on memories and emotional processes. The colour, the shape, the size, the brand, the claims and so on. All of these things have emotions and associations in our brains without us having to think about them. And as associations become more developed and stronger, they become shortcuts to decision making. Over time, we can develop very strong emotional networks that can even overcome barriers such as price. Neuroscience can help us understand all of this, both in real time, moment by moment, or by looking more specifically at these associations such as trust and premiumness, etc. And now we have a problem. If so much of this processing is being carried out in our brain at an unconscious level, how can we measure it if people cannot tell us about it? How do we measure this all-important emotional response? Well, fortunately, this is the role of neuroscience, to gain a window into this unconscious dimension, and we have a number of tools at our disposal. For this, there are a number of tools available. By using brain imaging technology, for example EEG, we can measure the brain's emotional response when presented with a new pack, for example. Combine this with eye tracking, we can not only see what drives attention, but what the unconscious emotional response is to individual design elements, the logo, the message, the visuals and so on. We can even go further to understand how the brain responds to tactile finishes or functionality when we pick up, handle and open a pack, for example. All of these things are essential parts of the brand experience, but very difficult to measure through self-reporting. The second way is we can look at implicit techniques, which is what I'm going to talk about for the rest of this session. Understanding how speed of response can reveal to us what someone truly feels about what a pack is communicating. One way we can explore the unconscious or implicit associations is using a method called reaction time testing. Now, reaction time testing uses speed of response to tell us how convinced someone is about what they say. In the 90s, it was quite clear that racial prejudice didn't exist in the United States. Why? Well, paper and pencil testing said so. No one said they had a racial bias, so it must not exist. However, some rather more switched-on people thought that this might not be the case. So they developed something called the IAT, the Implicit Association Test. And by measuring not just what someone says, but how fast they say it, we're able to show that people did not truly believe what they said, that racial prejudices did exist. What fires together, wires together. Reaction times are about experiences stored in our brains, built throughout our lifetime, and these non-verbal emotional associations, the stronger the link, the faster the reaction time, the more the emotional charge. So what does this mean for pack testing? Well, pack has a whole host of things that we might want to communicate. These may be specific things about the trustworthiness of the brand, for example, the premiumness of the product, or the quality of the ingredients. And we can, of course, ask people, is the brand trustworthy? Is it worth its price? Does it contain natural ingredients? But how do we know if the people say it is a reflection of what they truly believe? By capturing not just what they say it's worth the price, but how fast they say it, we can measure how convinced they are. Do they truly believe it? Or, for example, are they just playing back the pack messaging to you? So, for our example here, I was asked whether Hellmann's mayonnaise was worth its price. I agreed it was worth it, and my reaction time was fast. I truly believe what I said. But on the right, we have Becky's response. Now, Becky here said that Hellmann's was worth its price, but she was a little slow in her response. She doesn't truly believe it. In this example, we tested 2 pack routes for Hellmann's mayonnaise, and you can see a small design change, one talking about heritage, the other mainly focusing on the ingredients, the free-range eggs and containing omega-3. So we asked people the extent to which they agreed that these packs met a number of criteria, a number of attributes. Now if we look at the results of what they said, we see a rather flat result. The only difference is that people say that the health route contains more natural ingredients, more than the other pack. Well, that's no surprise. It has an egg on it. So it sounds good news, right? Well, let's look at the speed of response. Remember, the faster the response, the more convinced they are about what they say. Now, the spots on the charts indicate the speed of response. Red is slow. They're not truly convinced. Yellow is neutral, and green is a fast response. They say it and they mean it. But now look, suddenly we have some differences between the designs. At a rational level, people agree that both packs are very similar, but implicitly with the health route, people are convinced that the design is better tasting and the brand more trusted and conveying expertise. But contains natural ingredients has a slower response. People don't truly believe it. They're just saying what is on the pack. It has no emotional charge, no strong link in the brain. And this is also having a knock-on effect to the credibility of the premiumness of the product. So, what would we say to our client? Well, the new pack is truly communicating some strong features, but the key message of natural ingredients is not yet resonating emotionally. To succeed, supporting comms would need to focus on this to create a strong link in the brain between naturalness and the brain in order to warrant its premium positioning. So while it's important to know what consumers say and how they behave, we mustn't ignore the majority of what drives our decision making happens at a level outside of our conscious control, and that this is what underlies our decision making process at the shelf. In reality, we have only a tiny window to capture consumers' attention and to make an emotional connection that will drive purchase. So we have to look to employ new ways of thinking and new ways of researching packs to understand this.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. That was really great. It was really interesting. I'm just going to take a look now at the questions that you have sent across. Okay, so if anyone does have any questions, do send them off. I've got a couple here. First one is from Kate, who has asked, if I was developing a pack for a brand new brand, can these techniques also still be used?
Okay, well, certainly yes, the answer is yes, they definitely can be used, and arguably one could argue that they're even more important for a brand new brand than an existing one, because obviously when you're testing an existing brand, you've got a current pack as a benchmark, and you can understand whether your new pack is better than your current. But with a brand new brand, you've got no benchmark. There is no existing pack. So arguably it places even more importance on making sure that that pack is as effective as possible, so that when you launch on shelf, the pack is truly supporting that launch window, and therefore implicit techniques can ensure that it's as optimised as possible.
And one other question from Joe. He's asking, actually, how, if I was to add on these extra kind of techniques, so if I was to include things like implicit testing, what would that do in terms of how long a pack test would take if I was to add those elements?
Well, everything we've talked about today doesn't really impact on timings. We'll still be using traditional approaches, the normal sort of questions and answers that you'd expect on any pack test. All of the implicit techniques that we've talked about happen in the background, so it might add a few minutes to the interview, for example, if we're looking at implicit techniques around the emotions, but in terms of the overall duration of a pack test, it doesn't really make a major difference.
Okay, great. And I've got a question here that's just come through from Antonia. So they're asking, is there any existing benchmark for how long a convinced versus an unconvinced response would take, or is it all relative in terms of concept A versus concept B?
Okay, good question. Obviously this is a relatively new technique, so we're still building up norms to understand from an implicit level exactly what is a good score. So most of what we're doing at the moment is looking at their response from an explicit perspective, to see whether they rationally believe that it's delivering a certain message, and then looking and comparing that to their implicit to see whether they truly believe it. That's certainly the line that we'll be taking for certainly the next sort of few months, until there's a reasonable base to understand exactly what might be good and what might be not so good.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just give it a moment or two in case there are any other questions. I think that's all the ones we've had there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's great that you've taken time out to come on and listen. Also, just to let you know that I will send across a recording of the webinar, so you can refer back to it at a later time if you want to, and also if you want to share it with any of your colleagues as well, that's absolutely fine. We have also, I think this is around about our 5th webinar that we've hosted now here at Marketing Sciences. So if you do want to have a look at any of the webinars that we've run to learn anything more about some of the different techniques we're using, you can have a look at those on our website, which is www.marketing-sciences.com. Okay, so great. Well, have a lovely afternoon. Thank you very much.